The Arroyo Channel is that old friend you discover when you're going through that awkward, I have something to say phase. You know what you have to say is of incredible value, but you need that friend that's going to let you spew it all out without worrying about too much judgment. Okay, maybe there's a little bit of judgment, but it is mostly constructive. A friend like that empowers you and introduces you to other friends who may share your views and maybe some who don't. But you can always count on a friend like the Arroyo Channel to get the conversation started. So let's get started. Keeping things moving here at the Arroyo Channel is no small task. Our staff is very passionate about the work that they do, and part of our passion is helping you to communicate your passion. If you've been watching this show for the last few months, you should already know that it all begins with an orientation and tour. Right now, we get to talk to your tour guide, Pasadena Media's Head of Community Development, Aaron B. Wheeler. Welcome to the show.
How you doing, Siobhan?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Okay, so I've known you for a little while, 1 or 2 decades.
Right, exactly,
so
right.
We go back a little bit of ways. Why don't we start with who you are and where you came from? Where are you from?
Well, basically, I'm from Pasadena. Born and raised. I think I was one of the last who were actually born in Pasadena, and I was actually born in a house. And actually, I think about
Born on the floor of a mud home in somewhere in the back alleys. Okay, and so you're a Pasadena native. You're clearly familiar with the community, which must help in your work. But at some point, you decided to get into entertainment. So tell me a little bit about your background with entertainment. Where does that start?
How far do you want to go back?
As far back as you want to take.
You got like 12 minutes?
That's all we've got.
Okay. Basically, it goes back to theater. I did stage and theater, and also worked in front of and behind the scenes. From there, it went from basically going into video production with a certain friend of mine called Dina Boys Productions back in the day.
Sounds like good times.
Yeah, sound like really good times. And then started my own, actually, before that, with Dina Boys, we actually started the Crown City News together. We were actually one of the founders of Crown City News. And then from there, Crown City News moved on without me, and
It got so much better.
I know, really did. And then I started Sunny Mountain Media Group, and the Sunny Mountain Media Group became a integrated marketing company. And so as I was sitting as a Sunny Mountain Media Group, I sat on the board here at Pasadena Media.
Well, let's back it up just a little bit, because at some point, what's the first point where you came into what is now Pasadena Media?
Oh, the first
What was
point,
your first introduction?
You were my first introduction.
Right.
That's what you really wanted to
apologize.
hear.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's true.
Exactly. Okay, so I knew this guy that we went to high school. His name was Chevelle Devine, and
Sounds like a really awesome
and he was
guy.
taking ROP class here, and I said, hey, let me go hang out with him and eat free food for right.
Those were the good days.
Yeah, those were the good days. And so during that time, I learned video production, the behind the scenes of television. Got a chance to meet new people, friends that I'm still friends with to this day. And it just became a family. It became a real community of knowledgeable people, mentors. Yeah.
And you have been through 4 facilities, I guess 3.5 if you want to count the charter studio days.
Exactly, because obviously I moved up to Spokane, Washington for a little while, and I worked for an NBC affiliate up there as a videographer, studio, and also did some writing news for a bit. And so I think I just just came into the last days of the charter and then went into the hen's teeth days. Right.
And when you came back, you were more as a producer, so you're no stranger to producing.
Right, so I've done all four, four places. I've been a volunteer, I've been a producer, I've been a board member, and I'm now staff.
Okay. So. What is it that keeps you here?
What keeps me here? My passion for community media, just for teaching, for training, seeing people grow. This place is not just a place where you just learn, you make television, you make funny faces and things like that. At the end of the day,
I must be doing it wrong. I didn't get the memo. I'm sorry.
At the end of the day, what I've learned about Pasadena Media, what Pasadena Media has become now, is basically it's a merge between community, media, and technology. With new technology coming out there in media, we've learned and created this sort of incubator of voice and community and culture. We help the producers here to accelerate. So it's really with my understanding of what Pasadena Media is in the bigger picture. It's not just public access anymore. It's really truly an incubator and an accelerator for the community voice.
Okay. And part of your job here is as head of community development. You're doing some outreach work. You're doing training classes. So a lot of these skills you've picked up along the way. The producing skills, being both in front of and behind the camera, and now back in front of the camera.
Right,
again.
exactly right.
How do you take all of that and bring it? Because one of the things we do is we really boil down television to a pretty simple formula.
Right.
I always say TV is not rocket science. It kind of is, though. So how do you bring everything that took you those years to develop and bring it to a person and say, here, you can do this, and in a month they're on TV?
It took experience. I was a young father. Went into school in and out for a long time, trying to work and go to school. And so when this opportunity came in, to work behind the scenes and learn behind the scenes, and then like I said, my background way too long, so this could last a little longer. This
is a short segment.
Okay, but
one of these days I'm going to get a watch.
But I know, really. And so overall, I'm a marketing guy. That's what I am. And so when taking the experience I've had in media and in business and in communications, it has just flourished to where I created a formula in my teaching. So I'm able. So not only I teach through experience, because I'm a technical guy too. I do. I shoot in camera and I edit, and it just become this natural way of trying to sort of simplify things that everyone from whatever age group can be able to take that information and move forward throughout their lives.
Okay, so let's do a little preview of what it takes to actually get a show here on the channel.
Okay.
I walk through the door. What's the first step?
Well, number one, right now what we do is that we do an orientation. The orientation is basically to teach you about the nuances of Pasadena Media, how the community is really it's a co-op relationship between the community and the city, and even with the cable companies. That's this co-op relationship that the city basically provides in business terms and in Hollywood business terms, the city is basically sort of like the executive producer. They provide the funds and all the resources, and with that, the producers are the ones who actually create content for the channel. So when you have this co-op relationship with the community who's looking for content about their culture within the Pasadena or within internationally now. We actually have viewers in Italy, long-time viewers, and so they're trying to not only learn the culture of Pasadena, but learn the culture of the United States, learn the culture of what having a voice really is, what transparency really is.
Mm-hmm. And again, back to training. So you do the orientation, you kind of make that presentation,
right.
And then what's step two?
So basically, from orientation, you have 4 different paths, right? You can either be a producer, you can learn studio operations, you can be a director, or you can go in for post-production, talk about editing and graphic design and stuff like that.
And that determines which educational path.
Right, exactly, what educational path. And that's the curriculum. That's the curriculum path, I should say. So from there, if you're interested in being a producer, it's fairly simple. You take the producer's class with me, because I'm the one who teaches the producer's class with our other staff members here. Mm-hmm. And then from there, you volunteer on shows. You turn in, you make sure that you develop your show, and we have staff that comes together and helps you develop your show. In general, to become a true producer, the understanding the actual producer's path, it's basically internally about 6 months, or it feels like 6 months, right? But here, to actually be a producer only takes about 2, maybe 3 months, if you're steady, if you really do what it takes to be a producer and get that.
How important do you think it is to have a facility like this?
Oh, it's extremely important. Like I said, we're the niche, right? We're between the student who just got out of high school to the college student who wants to get into deeper learning in the media, and so we're in between there. But then we're also those who want to change their career. We've had rocket scientists, literal rocket scientists, who've started their own production company because they stepped out of that career. of doctors who stepped out of their career and wanted to get into the media and come and learn to Pasadena Media. They could have went to PCC or but they chose to come here. Some did go on to PCC because they came here and said, I know I need to learn more. But I consider this sort of the ER of media. The ER of television. So when you get in here, you get your hands dirty, you're carrying bodies. Sandbags.
Hopefully we're not carrying too many bodies around
but,
here. Although I'm feeling pretty tired, you might have to carry me out of here tonight.
But it's truly the ER of media, because you get in here, we put you in the fire. That's it. You go in there, we give you the information, the language you need to learn, and then it's time to put your hands on it.
Okay, so if you were to summarize it all, what would you say is the one thing people would get out of here the most? What's that?
Skills.
Okay.
Talent.
I was going to say a sentence, but you put it in one word, skills. That sums it up pretty good.
Skills and talent, because you have different types of people. You have people who want to be behind the camera and stay behind the camera. They love being behind the camera. That's their niche. That's their love. And then we have those who are in front of the camera, and that's their niche and love. And so when you come here, you not only become skillful on the technical aspect of it, but you can also become a talent, a host, a personality that entwine. So you take both that. And really, when I teach producers to be showrunners. Now, a showrunner term, if anyone's never heard of the showrunner term, it's basically a person who takes care of their show and runs it like no other. Right, and you have tons of people who do we have shows now that our staff does, and we have wonderful showrunners such as
this show,
yes,
which is actually operated primarily by volunteers.
Right.
I don't want to give too much away, so if people are interested in learning more about coming here, if you like what you heard, feel free to contact us here at Pasadena Media. To learn more, we're going to take a quick break, but don't go too far. Coming up next, we're going to talk with one of our producers who's gone through this whole process about his passion.
I'm a retired school psychologist, and helping people was my thing.
I was very independent until I could take care of myself. I fell, and I had to have Meals on Wheels.
After my stroke, when Meals on Wheels started, I was on the other end of the stick, so to speak.
Meals on Wheels, coming to my door as someone who's housebound, having someone check on me, assures me that I'm not forgotten.
Meals on Wheels has given me a mode of freedom that I wouldn't have otherwise.
We're the clients.
We are the clients.
We are the clients of Meals on Wheels.
America, let's do lunch.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation. Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Here on the Arroyo Channel, we take a very reasonable approach to how we get things done. But just how reasonable is it? Who better than to ask than Walter Brown, producer and host of Is It Reasonable? Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to ask you about your show, but before we get there, I just want to figure out how you ended up where you are right now, in that chair specifically. So what was your first introduction to Pasadena Media?
Oddly enough, it was one of my neighbors. Called him Sarge. He was a retired Army sergeant. And he spoke about some of the TV experiences he had while in the service, but he mentioned Pasadena Media. And I said, Pasadena Media? What's that? And he said, public television. And right away that intrigued me. And he said that he had produced a show.
I think I remember that show. I think he produced it with Charles Clay. if memory serves me correctly.
That's absolutely correct. And so it was he who turned me on and gave me the number to call. And so I said, what a wonderful outlet to share the message that I feel was very important, not only to the community of Pasadena, but the entire world.
Okay. And that brings us to your show. Well, actually, hold on. I'm going to hold on to that just a little bit longer. So when you first came in, you had to do some training, I'm assuming. So around what time are we talking? This has got to be...
1997.
Yeah, okay, wow, yeah, fun time.
That far back.
Yeah, so you've been through 4 studios now?
Yes, I've been a long time.
And you've been pretty consistent throughout.
Yes, I believe that when people come up to you, when people say, hey, I saw your show, very interesting topic. And consequently, I said, well, it's working.
Okay, makes it all worthwhile.
It certainly does.
So what was the training like when you came in?
Well, the training was not difficult, but yet I found it somewhat uncomfortable in the fact that there were certain cues and you couldn't jump around a lot, and you had to stay more or less stationed in one spot. And so...
Is that out of your element?
Out of my element, completely out of my element.
Okay.
But over the process of time, I was able to discipline myself. I was able to stop with the popping peas and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And
tell us what that show is.
Yes.
Your show is?
Is It Reasonable?
Is It Reasonable? Okay, we actually have a little bit of footage from your show. We're going to take a look at that right now, so let's take a look.
In order that you, would be able to have fellowship and enjoy the presence of the one supreme being in all the universe, who actually has given you your life and your freedom of choice. You see, you move and have your being because it is my Father's will that you do so. It's His will. He wants you to walk. He wants you to talk. He wants you to experience that which He has provided in the nature of our environment. The Lord created all of this. He created it for a purpose.
Okay, so that's just a little flavor of Is It Reasonable? So you said very important message, and you've been doing it now for a while, so you've been sticking to your message. We'll talk a little bit about the process, because I said in the intro, you have something you want to say. You know it's important. You need that avenue to be able to say that. So here at the Arroyo Channel, which is now the Arroyo Channel, you have that avenue. But it's simple, but there is some work that goes into it. So let's go back. I want to go back to the beginning, and then let's kind of march our way up to where we are now with how it is you do your show. So in the very beginning, your very first episode, do you remember how that went?
I do remember how that went, and I remember the process of asking individuals who had an interest in my show if they would be willing to participate in areas such as directing, floor managing, and teleprompter operator. And I was able, at first, to solicit the cooperation and help of some volunteers and some other producers who came in from time to time. But as time progressed, I found it more difficult to solicit or acquire individuals who were willing to come in at various times, production slots.
Yeah, because life happens, it can get in the way. There's all kinds of things to take into consideration.
That's it.
And that's one of the probably the more difficult parts of producing. A lot of it is just time management.
That's
it. And in producing, it's not just your time. It's a time of the facility when it's available. It's a time of all the volunteers you're asking to come in when they're available.
Right. And, you know, there were those times when the facility had gone through changes, technical changes, and operations such as you had to come in, you had post-production, and you had pre-production, and all that kind of thing that went on. And it was a challenge for me. It was not just more or less the message, but there are other things I had to take into consideration in producing that message. And I loved doing it. I wanted to spend the time, but then I found myself somewhat overwhelmed at times. Then what really encouraged and really sparked an enthusiasm again was Ian.
Ian? Okay.
Yes,
One
Ian.
of our techs.
Yes, indeed. And he says, you know, you ought to start editing. And I says, no, that's too tough. That's rough. He says, no, we have editing classes, and once you edit, you can come in and produce. Well, I took Ian's advice. I started editing, and I says, why didn't I do this in the beginning?
Yeah, it's a bit of a game changer, and knowing your show, there are a lot of moving parts in it, and if you're trying to do it all live straight through, and it only takes one of those parts to get out of sync, and the whole thing starts to get progressively. It's hard to get back on that wave. In the editing, you get a little bit more control. So you found that that's the way that works for your show?
That works absolutely perfectly for my show. I'm able to emphasize certain events, certain happenings. I'm able to, with the emphasis being put on the actual event that took place, I'm able to edit, I'm able to bring in the necessary music that is so necessary
Helps to support the
support
weight
the
of the
theme
emotion.
that I'm trying to present.
Okay.
So yes, that was a process, a learning process, and I'm still learning, but the majority of the editing process I've got down, and I'm so happy.
I do have to say, you picked it up pretty quick. You took to it with a vengeance. The learning curve can be steep, but once you get up on top of that hill, it still goes up. Because
Yes.
I don't know if
Yes.
you've had to mess with the most recent update for the software.
Right.
When you do, I apologize in advance. I probably should have checked before I ran.
Here we go. Here we go.
But the principles are there. The principles of number one, storytelling, because it does come
Yes.
back to the message. It does come back to what it is you're trying to say.
Absolutely.
And you've got that down.
Yes.
So then it's just a matter of applying the technology and the skills you've acquired to use that technology to that message to get the show out.
And I found that to be so helpful and so encouraging, because I truly believe my message is important, and that is the Bible, the Word of God. And the Bible, for me, is an historical document. And what I attempt to do is to present evidence that substantiate the events and happenings in Scripture. A lot of people think of the Bible as, unfortunately, fairy tales or mythological happenings, and it's not. The Bible is actually a historical document, and it's substantiated through documentation, not from Christians only, not from first century Palestine eyewitness or the apostles of the God-man Jesus Christ, but other documentarians of the time who wrote down the events, events that were reported to them, who were not Christians, and some of them were very antagonistic toward Christians. But they related through their documents the events that happened in first century Palestine. And that's what I try to present. Archaeological find through art. I try to communicate, hey, this is not a fairy tale. There's no mythology here.
So do you believe you could do this another way if there were not in the Arroyo Channel or Pasadena Media? What would it take for you to be able to do this?
I don't believe I could reach the audience that I've reached if it weren't for the Arroyo Channel. And I was really overwhelmed by the people who watch the show. At first I said, well, I mean, Pasadena is a small audience, but then I had a person from New York who said, I saw the show. And when my Bible school, one of my directors, when I went to Bible school, he was amazed. He said, "You're on TV now."
Okay, so you get a little bit of celebrity out of it to boot. You're getting the message out. You're getting. It's one way to know that people are watching, because I've had that situation where you do get the funny stares in the grocery store, and they know you from somewhere.
They can't quite figure it out.
Well, it's good to know that you've been able to make very effective use of this tool. You've been able to adapt with a lot of the changes that you've had to go through, because it's a constant state of flux in the access world in general, and then the technology side of it. It keeps moving.
Yes.
But you've held to it. You've stuck to your guns, and is it reasonable?
It is definitely reasonable, and I see the value of it, and I see that, technology is changing. I mean, we had VHS, and now we've got DVDs. Okay, now we've got, those little phones that I don't even know how to operate.
Well, we'll have
yet.
to get you up to speed on that. That might have to wait for another episode, though. I do want to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing you. What time is your show on?
My time is 2 p.m. Wednesdays.
Okay, so until we move it. All right.
Yes.
That is all the time we have for this edition of Arroyo Profiles. I hope you found it informative and entertaining. If you're interested in learning more, you can find Pasadena Media through all of the usual social media platforms. For those of you who want to do more than like, follow, and subscribe, head over to our website and you can get involved. As you've already heard, we offer training for anyone interested in learning about television production, whether you're interested in pushing the buttons or pushing your point of view. It all starts with an orientation and tour. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the Arroyo Channel.